It began in the summer of 2023, inside a house that most people in Ridgewood, Oregon, would have sworn had no secrets left to give. The home sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, its roofline sloping low beneath the shadow of fir trees that had grown taller with every passing decade. It was an ordinary house, ordinary in the way that almost seemed designed to avoid attention. White siding, a porch swing that hadn't creaked in years, and an attic that no one had entered for longer than most neighbors could remember. The family who had recently purchased the home, a couple relocating from Portland with their teenage son, had spent weeks clearing out the clutter left behind by generations of previous owners. Old newspapers, boxes of Christmas decorations, stacks of forgotten photo albums. The attic in particular felt like a museum of discarded memories. It was during this clearing, one late afternoon when the sun filtered through the tiny circular attic window, that they stumbled across a box that didn't seem to belong. Unlike the rest of the dusty cardboard, this box was wooden, handmade, its edges carefully joined, its surface scarred by time. A small rusted latch held it shut. When they opened it, expecting nothing more than trinkets or old letters, what they found instead would ripple through Ridgewood like an earthquake. Inside, nestled among yellowing scraps of newspaper, was a necklace. Silver, tarnished, but intact. Its chain was delicate, almost fragile, but the pendant told a different story. Oval-shaped, worn smooth as though it had been touched many times, it carried an engraving. 2 letters. SW. At first the couple didn't think much of it. Perhaps the initials belonged to a grandmother or a child long since moved away. But when the teenage son, curious, pulled out his phone and searched Ridgewood SW necklace, the first result left them frozen in place. Because those 2 initials didn't just belong to a random family member, they belonged to someone whose name the town had whispered about for nearly 30 years, Sarah Whitmore. The 19-year-old girl who vanished in 1995, her disappearance a wound that had never healed. The necklace was hers. And suddenly, a house once thought to be just another aging property became something else entirely. A crime scene waiting to be understood. But whose attic had it been hidden in? To answer that question, we need to go back almost 3 decades. Back to a time before the whispers, before the unanswered questions. Back to the summer of 1995 in Ridgewood, Oregon. In 1995, Ridgewood was the kind of town people moved to when they wanted to feel safe. Nestled against the foothills of the Cascade Mountains, it had a population small enough that the grocery clerk knew your name, and the mailman knew if you were expecting a package before you did. Neighbors shared casseroles, kids rode bikes until sunset, and the loudest sound most nights was the chirping of crickets along the tree line. It was the type of place that seemed immune to the chaos of the outside world. The kind of town where crime was measured in shoplifted candy bars or a teenager sneaking a beer from their father's garage fridge. But in the summer of 1995, Ridgewood's illusion of safety would shatter, and it would begin with a girl named Sarah Whitmore. Sarah wasn't a headline, not yet. She was just 19, balancing on the thin edge between adolescence and adulthood. She lived with her parents and younger brother in a modest blue house on Birchwood Avenue, a street lined with maples whose leaves glowed fiery orange each autumn. She was known for always carrying a small purple notebook tucked under her arm. Some said she scribbled poems in it, others thought it was a journal. But whatever it was, Sarah rarely went anywhere without it. She had quirks that made her unforgettable to those around her. She hated soda, preferring iced tea even in the dead of winter. She loved music, especially grunge bands that filtered down from nearby Seattle. Her room was papered with posters of Pearl Jam and Nirvana, and her stereo was always playing at a volume her mother considered just a little too loud. Sarah was fiercely close to her younger brother Daniel, who was 13 at the time. He described her as both a protector and a best friend, the one who slipped him quarters for the arcade, the one who told him when their parents were being unfair, the one who promised that no matter what, she'd always be there for him. She had plans too. Sarah was set to start college that fall, with dreams of studying literature. Friends remembered her talking about wanting to leave Ridgewood someday, not because she disliked it, but because she believed the world was bigger, waiting for her beyond the pine-covered hills. But Sarah's story wouldn't unfold the way she imagined. July 8, 1995, was supposed to be an ordinary day. That morning, she woke early, something unusual for her on a Saturday. The sky was overcast, but the air was warm, heavy with the smell of pine and distant rain. She laced her sneakers, slipped her purple notebook into her bag, and told her mother she was heading into town to meet a friend. Neighbors saw her walking down Birchwood Avenue around 11 a.m., hair tied back, headphones in, nodding slightly to whatever song was spilling through her cassette player. She waved at Mrs. Cavanaugh, the elderly woman 2 houses down, and stopped briefly to pet a golden retriever tied up outside the corner store. To anyone watching, it was a normal day in a normal town. But what no one knew was that this would be the last time Ridgewood saw Sarah Whitmore alive. The car, the missing girl, the unanswered questions, that would all come later. For now, all anyone saw was a teenager moving through an ordinary Saturday. And yet, something was different that day. Something unseen, just beneath the surface. Because before the sun would set on July 8, 1995, Ridgewood would lose more than just a daughter. It would lose its innocence. And in the days that followed, every detail of Sarah's life, the purple notebook, the music she loved, the way she laughed with her brother, would take on a haunting new weight. Because when a small town becomes the setting for a mystery, even the most ordinary things begin to look like clues. But what happened after Sarah walked down Birchwood Avenue that morning? And how did her necklace end up sealed away in an attic, almost 3 decades later? The answers begin with a car, found still running on the side of the road. July 8, 1995. The day had been ordinary enough in Ridgewood, Oregon. It was the height of summer, the kind of day when the air seemed to shimmer in the heat, and teenagers filled the small downtown with chatter, music, and the easy rhythm of a Saturday afternoon. By dusk, Sarah Whitmore had not returned home. The final hours of Sarah's known life can be traced through a handful of scattered witnesses, each one offering fragments of a story that never quite add up. At approximately 6:15 p.m., she was seen outside of Hanson's Deli, a corner shop 2 miles from her house. The cashier, a young man who had been in Sarah's English class the year before, remembered her clearly. She bought a bottle of iced tea, peach-flavored her favorite, and a pack of gum. She chatted briefly, her voice light, mentioning she might head down toward the park before heading home. She left on foot, headphones in place, her purple notebook tucked under her arm. About 20 minutes later, a group of local kids swore they saw her sitting on a bench near Birchwood Park. She was writing in her notebook, head bent low, the setting sun casting her silhouette against the green of the trees. They didn't remember seeing her leave, only that when they passed the same bench again, it was empty. At 7:04 p.m., a delivery driver claimed to see a young woman matching Sarah's description walking along the road near the Ridgewood overpass. He recalled her because she seemed distracted, turning her head as though listening for something beyond the music in her headphones. She glanced back at him briefly, then quickened her pace. Minutes later, she was simply gone. When Sarah failed to return home by nightfall, her parents were immediately concerned. Sarah was not the type to disappear without word. By 10 p.m., her father was driving the usual routes she might have taken, while her mother called her friends one by one. None had seen her, none knew where she was. At 11:17 p.m., Officer Craig Miller of the Ridgewood Police Department responded to a call from a passerby reporting an abandoned vehicle on Birchwood Avenue. When Miller arrived, he found Sarah's car. It was parked at a crooked angle on the side of the road, driver's door hanging open, engine still running. The headlights cast an eerie glow across the empty street, illuminating nothing but the dark stretch of pavement ahead. Her purse was inside, untouched on the passenger seat. Wallet, keys, lipstick, all accounted for. Nothing appeared stolen, but something was wrong. On the ground near the driver's side, Miller spotted a single sneaker. It was Sarah's, a white canvas shoe with a loose lace. Its partner was never recovered. And then there was the detail that unsettled even seasoned officers: the streetlights on Birchwood Avenue. Every lamp on that stretch of road, usually humming to life by 9 p.m., was dark. Power company records later showed no outage. Neighbors remembered their porch lights working just fine. Only those streetlights, directly above Sarah's abandoned car, had failed that night. When officers knocked on the Whitmore home's door just after midnight, Sarah's mother answered. She would later describe the moment in interviews as a blur. The words, "car found," "door open," "not inside," pounding against her ears without fully registering. Her father, stoic by nature, was visibly shaken. His hands trembled as he clutched the doorknob, asking the same question over and over. "Where's Sarah? Where is she?" Her younger brother Daniel, only 13 at the time, recalled standing on the stairs, watching the adults speak in urgent, hushed tones. He remembered the sight of his mother crumpling into a chair, sobbing, while his father pressed his forehead against the wall. The family joined the search that night. Neighbors poured onto the streets with flashlights, calling Sarah's name into the dark woods beyond Birchwood Avenue. But the night gave nothing back. No footprints, no broken branches, no sign of struggle, only silence. By dawn, fear had settled over Ridgewood like a storm. The next day, police conducted a full search of Sarah's room. On the surface, nothing was unusual. Posters on the wall, books stacked neatly, her purple notebook missing but not unexpected. She carried it everywhere. But then investigators noticed something strange. Her phone, an old corded model that sat on the nightstand, had a small spiral notepad lying beside it. On the top page was a list of times, handwritten, neat, as if Sarah had been keeping track of calls. The last entry was circled in red ink, 7:12 p.m. No name, no number, just the time. Police checked the household phone records. At 7:12 p.m., a call had indeed been placed to the Whitmore residence. The problem? It lasted only 8 seconds, and the number was blocked. Even stranger, the notepad page beneath the call log had been torn out. And then there was one final detail. In the drawer of Sarah's nightstand, investigators found a scrap of paper. On it, in Sarah's handwriting, were 4 words. "He's been watching me." No context, no date, no name. The officers sealed the room that day, labeling it evidence. But the questions they uncovered would only deepen the mystery. Who had called Sarah at 7:12 p.m., the same time witnesses placed her near the overpass? Why was she logging her calls in the first place? And who was the he she believed had been watching her? The truth was that Ridgewood had lost more than a girl. It had inherited a mystery that would haunt every street, every family for decades to come. But the police were only at the beginning. Because what they would soon uncover next, hidden within Sarah's own belongings, would raise even darker questions. Questions that suggested someone close to her might have known far more than they ever admitted. The morning after Sarah Whitmore vanished, Ridgewood police launched an investigation that would stretch their small department beyond its limits. At first, optimism lingered. 19-year-olds sometimes ran away, the officers told themselves. Maybe she had gone to Portland with friends, or maybe she needed space before college. But as the hours passed, as her car sat impounded with the engine still warm in their memories, optimism gave way to dread. They began with the obvious question: who would want Sarah gone? Suspect number 1, the ex-boyfriend. The first name on everyone's lips was Michael Turner. Michael had dated Sarah on and off during their senior year. He was 20 now, working at his uncle's auto shop, and by all accounts still carrying the weight of a breakup that had been far more final for Sarah than it was for him. Friends remembered him as quick to anger, jealous, the kind of boy who turned up uninvited to parties if he knew Sarah would be there. When police knocked on his door 2 days after her disappearance, his reaction was cagey. He didn't ask where she was or if she'd been found. Instead, he folded his arms and muttered, "I knew something like this would happen. She was too trusting." Detectives leaned in. Did something like this mean he knew more than he should? Michael explained that Sarah had ended things 3 weeks prior, telling him she wanted to focus on school. He admitted he hadn't taken it well. He admitted he'd driven past her house once or twice in the weeks since. But he swore he had nothing to do with her disappearance. Then came his alibi. On the night of July the 8th, Michael had been at a barbecue with co-workers. 6 people confirmed his presence from 6 p.m. until well past midnight. He'd been drinking, loud, visible. Police checked receipts, photographs, even a video someone had taken at the party. Michael was in the background, beer in hand. The suspicion that had burned so brightly collapsed in the face of hard evidence. Michael Turner was jealous, bitter, and perhaps a little obsessive. But he hadn't taken Sarah, or if he had, he was a magician. Suspect number 2, the neighbor. If Michael wasn't the one, perhaps the answers lay closer to home. Directly across from the Whitmores lived Harold Hal Granger, a 56-year-old widower. He was the kind of neighbor who mowed his lawn twice a week and stood at his window longer than anyone thought necessary. Sarah's mother admitted quietly that he made her uneasy, polite enough on the surface, but with a lingering stare that left her skin crawling. Police first interviewed Hal the same night Sarah's car was found. He claimed he hadn't seen or heard anything unusual. He'd gone to bed early, he said, and slept straight through the night. But when detectives returned days later to clarify his statement, something didn't line up. This time, Hal mentioned hearing a car door slam around 10 p.m. He said he peeked through his blinds and thought he saw a figure walking quickly toward Birchwood Avenue. Why hadn't he mentioned that detail before? Hal shrugged. I didn't think it mattered. Detectives noted his nervous mannerisms, the way he tugged at his sleeve, the way his eyes darted toward the window, as if checking who might be listening. They searched his property with his reluctant permission. In his garage, they found nothing more sinister than boxes of tools and the faint smell of motor oil. But one detail stuck with investigators. On the night Sarah disappeared, Hal's porch light had been switched off. For a man who was known to keep his home brightly lit at all hours, that stood out. Why had his story changed? And what was he hiding? Suspect number 3, the co-worker. The next lead came from Sarah's part-time job at the Ridgewood Library. Her co-workers described her as diligent, warm, often staying late to reshelve books even after her shift had ended. One colleague in particular, 32-year-old archivist David Kessler, seemed unusually invested in the case once word of her disappearance spread. Kessler had worked at the library for nearly a decade, a quiet man who blended into the rows of dusty shelves. But when detectives interviewed staff, several mentioned how often Kessler had sought Sarah out during breaks, how he lingered near her desk. After she went missing, he reportedly called the police station 3 times within 2 days, asking for updates. He told them he'd seen her leaving work earlier that week, walking alone down Birchwood Avenue. Some in town whispered that his interest bordered on obsession. A 30-something man hovering around a 19-year-old girl. It didn't sit right. But once again, the trail collapsed. On the night Sarah disappeared, Kessler had been volunteering at a local church fundraiser. Multiple parishioners confirmed his presence, describing him as quiet but helpful, stacking chairs and serving coffee until nearly midnight. No evidence connected him to Sarah's abandoned car, her missing shoe, or the chilling phone log. Another red herring. Another collapse into silence. By mid-July, detectives felt they were chasing shadows. Each suspect raised hope, and each hope dissolved into alibis and dead ends. Then, on July 15th, the Ridgewood police tip line received a call from a woman named Carol Fisher. She claimed she had seen Sarah on the night of her disappearance, but not where police thought she had been. Carol insisted she saw a girl matching Sarah's description at 7:45 p.m., nearly a mile from Birchwood Avenue. The girl had been walking quickly toward the old Ridgewood train depot, glancing over her shoulder as though someone was following. Carol noticed because the depot was abandoned, its boarded-up windows sagging against rusted tracks no train had touched in years. The problem? Police were confident Sarah had already vanished by then. Her car had been left running on Birchwood Avenue, shoe on the ground, lights extinguished overhead. If Carol was right, then the entire timeline the police had built, every assumption about where and when Sarah disappeared, was wrong. And if Sarah had been heading toward the depot, who or what was she meeting there? As the investigation stumbled, Ridgewood began to unravel. By late July, front doors that had once been left unlocked were bolted tight. Parents forbade their children from walking home after dark. Porch lights blazed like sentinels across neighborhoods, except on Birchwood Avenue, where residents claimed the street felt cursed. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some swore Sarah had been targeted by a serial predator drifting along the highways. Others whispered about satanic cults, secret tunnels beneath the depot, or a police cover-up. At the grocery store, whispers fell silent when the Whitmores entered. At the diner, conversations trailed off whenever the name Sarah floated through the air. The town was not just grieving, it was turning on itself, suspicion curdling into paranoia. And through it all, the Whitmore family lived in a state of suspended terror. Sarah's mother refused to touch her daughter's bedroom, leaving it frozen in time. Her father patrolled Birchwood Avenue every night, flashlight in hand, searching for something, anything the police had missed. Daniel, too young to carry the weight, withdrew into silence, replaying the last time he'd seen his sister, replaying it until it blurred into nightmare. Ridgewood was a town built on trust. But in the weeks after Sarah's disappearance, trust evaporated. Neighbors eyed one another with suspicion, wondering who among them might be hiding the truth. Because if Sarah hadn't vanished, where police believed she had, if she had instead walked willingly toward the abandoned depot that night, then the entire town was standing on the edge of a deeper, darker mystery, and the truth was about to become stranger still. The Whitmore family tried to carry on after Sarah's disappearance, but silence weighed heavier with each passing year. Police boxes filled with dead-end leads and broken timelines. The house on Birchwood Avenue remained eerily unchanged. Sarah's room preserved as though she might return any moment. But the most chilling clue to emerge in 1995 came not from a witness or a suspect, but from Sarah herself. In late July, investigators combing through Sarah's belongings discovered something that made their stomachs sink. Her purple notebook, her constant companion, sat on the desk, half filled with doodles, song lyrics, and rambling thoughts about college and friendships. But tucked between the lines of everyday teenage musings was a note that seemed to pulse with dread. Lately I feel like someone's watching me. Even when I walk home in daylight, it feels like eyes on my back. I don't know if it's in my head, but last night I thought I heard footsteps behind me. When I turned, nothing. Detectives underlined the entry, dated just 6 days before she vanished. They asked her friends, her family, her co-workers, had Sarah mentioned being followed? No one could recall her saying anything. She had kept it in her diary, as if speaking the words aloud would make them too real. For investigators, it was a chilling foreshadowing. The words were vague but specific enough to spark suspicion. If Sarah had felt hunted, perhaps her disappearance wasn't random at all. Someone in Ridgewood may have been circling her, waiting for the right moment. 28 years later, long after the case had slipped into the archives of forgotten tragedies, Ridgewood was jolted awake by a startling discovery. In the spring of 2023, a family renovating an old Victorian house on Maple Street stumbled upon a dusty box hidden deep in the attic crawlspace. Inside lay brittle newspapers, broken trinkets, and a silver necklace, its chain tangled and tarnished with age. Etched on the delicate pendant were the letters SW the initials matched. The necklace belonged to Sarah Whitmore. What chilled investigators wasn't just the necklace itself, but where it had been found. The Maple Street house had once belonged to a man with no obvious connection to Sarah, or so it seemed at first glance, but neighbors remembered the house well. In the late 90s, it had changed hands quickly, owned briefly by renters who kept to themselves, rarely seen in daylight. Why was Sarah's necklace hidden in an attic less than 3 miles from where she vanished? Had it been a trophy, a keepsake, or something left behind by accident? And most haunting of all, who had placed it there? From this point forward, the story splinters into 2 timelines, 2 haunting threads, decades apart, woven together like a braid tightening around the truth. In 1995, Ridgewood police wrestled with Sarah's diary entry, trying to decide if it was paranoia or prophecy. At the same time, they were drowning in tips about suspicious vans, drifters seen lurking near gas stations, and rumors about cult activity at the abandoned depot. Each theory carried weight and each slowly collapsed. Meanwhile, in 2023, forensic specialists dusted the necklace box for fingerprints. Nothing usable was found. DNA testing was attempted, but after so many years, degradation left little but trace contaminants. The object became less of a piece of evidence and more of a whisper, a haunting reminder that someone had touched this necklace, hidden it, and kept their secret sealed above a ceiling for nearly 3 decades. And so investigators, both past and present, returned to the same desperate question: who could have wanted Sarah gone? Theory 1. The Drifter. The original police narrative was simple. Ridgewood sat on Highway 26, a route often used by long-haul truckers and transients. It wasn't hard to imagine a stranger passing through town, spotting Sarah walking alone and seizing an opportunity. The evidence seemed to fit. Her car abandoned, purse intact, no sign of robbery, suggesting impulse rather than premeditation. Perhaps she was forced into a vehicle by someone she didn't know. For years, this was the official version. A random act of violence, faceless and unsolvable. But weaknesses gnawed at the theory. If it had been a drifter, why were the streetlights on Birchwood Avenue shut off that night? Who had the access, or the audacity, to plunge the block into darkness at just the right time? And why did Sarah's diary point to a pattern of being watched, not a single random encounter? The drifter theory, once comforting in its simplicity, began to fray. Theory 2. The Neighbor. Then came the necklace. When news of its discovery spread, old suspicions reignited around Harold Hal Granger, Sarah's across-the-street neighbor. Residents remembered his shifting stories, his porch light conveniently switched off the night she vanished, his anxious demeanor when asked simple questions. Now with the attic clue, some whispered that Hal may have had ties to the Maple Street house. Could he have rented it, even briefly, before selling his property in the early 2000s? County records showed the house had been under multiple short-term owners, some of whose names blurred in paperwork and rental agreements. Nothing concrete tied Hal to the attic. But in a town already primed for suspicion, the dots seemed too close not to connect. Neighbors recalled how he would often stand at his upstairs window, staring down Birchwood Avenue as if waiting. They remembered Sarah's mother quietly warning her daughter not to linger in conversation if Hal came outside. The attic clue to them felt less like coincidence and more like confirmation. Theory 3. Someone she knew. But there was another possibility, one that sent a deeper chill through Ridgewood. What if Sarah's disappearance wasn't the work of a stranger at all? What if it was someone she trusted? The diary suggested she had noticed something: footsteps, eyes, the sense of being followed, not once, but repeatedly. This wasn't a fleeting encounter. It was prolonged, deliberate, intimate. And the necklace in the attic, that wasn't random. It suggested access, knowledge, opportunity. A person in her circle, close enough to gain her trust, close enough to hide evidence in plain sight. Could it have been a friend, a co-worker, even a family acquaintance? The most haunting theory was also the simplest. Sarah hadn't vanished because of a drifter, or a shadowy neighbor, or a passing stranger. She had vanished because someone she knew, someone she may have let into her car, her home, her confidence, betrayed her. Someone had taken her away. And then, for nearly 30 years, someone had kept that secret hidden in the rafters of a quiet Ridgewood attic. The question now wasn't just who took Sarah Whitmore, it was far darker. Who kept her secret safe for almost 3 decades? And why did they finally leave a piece of her behind? The case of Sarah Whitmore remains, to this day, one of the most unsettling mysteries in Oregon's history. Nearly 3 decades have passed since the summer evening she vanished without a trace, and yet her presence still lingers in Ridgewood. It lingers in her photographs, yellowed with time. It lingers in the diary entries that feel as though they were written yesterday. It lingers in the whispered memories of classmates who still remember her laughter echoing through the halls of Ridgewood High. Sarah's life was frozen in 1995, caught in amber, unfinished. While her friends grew older, married and built lives, Sarah remained 19 forever. Forever walking the streets of Birchwood Avenue, forever scribbling into her purple notebook, forever on the cusp of adulthood, but never crossing into it. Her bedroom in the Whitmore house remains largely untouched, a time capsule of a girl's final days. Posters of bands that have long since faded into obscurity still hang on the walls. Her bookshelf, lined with worn paperbacks, has a thin film of dust that even her mother could never bring herself to wipe away. And on the nightstand beside her old corded phone lies the notepad, the page still marked with the mysterious call at 7:12 p.m. A circle in red ink that has never been explained. Visitors describe the room as heavy, almost suffocating. A place where time has not moved, where the air itself feels reluctant to shift, as if afraid to disturb what little of Sarah remains. Every case has unanswered questions, but Sarah's story is built almost entirely from them. Who was watching her? Why did the streetlights fail that night? Who called her phone at 7:12 p.m., only to vanish behind a blocked number? And most chilling of all, who placed her necklace in an attic 3 miles away, only to leave it there for nearly 3 decades? Theories abound. Some believe in the drifter narrative, that Sarah was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. Others are convinced her neighbor Hal Granger knew far more than he ever revealed. And then there are those who believe the darkest theory of all, that Sarah was betrayed not by a stranger, but by someone she knew and trusted. But without answers, all that remains is speculation. In Ridgewood, Sarah's absence became its own haunting presence. Parents began locking their doors earlier. Teenagers whispered warnings about walking home alone at dusk. For years, every unfamiliar car on Birchwood Avenue drew suspicious eyes. Some residents claim they still see her, phantoms of memory walking the same stretch of road where her car was found. A figure at the edge of the woods. A shadow reflected in a window. A fleeting image that vanishes the second you turn your head. Whether born of imagination or something stranger, Ridgewood has never shaken the feeling that Sarah is still there, woven into the fabric of the town, demanding to be remembered. And yet the attic clue stands as the most chilling reminder. A piece of Sarah, hidden away where no one would find it, unless by accident. Why was it placed there? Who had the motive to hide something so deeply and then walk away as though it meant nothing? Was it a trophy of guilt or an act of shame? Was the person who hid it silenced before they could reveal the truth? Or worse, are they still out there, living quietly among us, carrying the weight of a secret only they know? The necklace is both an artifact and a question mark, a key that unlocks nothing but more uncertainty. Sarah Whitmore's case is not just about a disappearance. It is about an unfinished story, one that began with a girl full of potential, of music, of laughter, and ended with silence, darkness, and the enduring ache of absence. Her diary entries speak of a girl who felt watched, a girl who sensed danger but couldn't name it. Her car, found running with the door ajar, speaks of an interruption so sudden she couldn't even take her purse. Her missing shoe on the pavement speaks of struggle or surrender, and the attic speaks of secrets, of something or someone that has never been brought into the light. Was the truth always hidden in plain sight? Was it there in her diary, in her neighbors' shifting stories, in the forgotten phone logs and torn notepaper? Or is the truth something no one in Ridgewood is ready to face? That the monster who took Sarah Whitmore may not have come from the outside at all, but from within the very circle of people she trusted most. Nearly 30 years later, the case remains unsolved. Sarah's voice silenced, her story unfinished. But her memory refuses to fade, clinging to the edges of Ridgewood like a whisper in the night. And so we're left with a chilling silence and a single unshakable thought. Somewhere, someone knows the truth. The question is, why haven't they spoken? Until they do, Sarah Whitmore's story remains a wound that Ridgewood cannot heal, A mystery that refuses to die, a ghost that will haunt the town forever. What do you think happened to Sarah Whitmore? Was the truth hidden in plain sight all along? Leave your theories in the comments. We read every single one. And if you want to keep Sarah's memory alive and explore more cold cases that deserve answers, make sure to subscribe. Because sometimes, the only way to keep these stories alive is to keep asking the questions no one else will.